Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. Today, we're going to talk about the gold medal first place finisher, the absolute gold, the GOAT of all college swimmers, Lia Thomas, who is stunning and brave in every way and got the gold medal in her college NCAA Gold's transition, Noble Gold sponsor transition. According to The Economist, the US stock market year to date has lost over $1 trillion. You heard that correctly. $1 trillion. Big blue chip companies like Facebook have fallen out of the top 10, and this has caused a lot of people to be worried, and the markets overall to have jitters. And while I don't believe in panicking, while I don't believe in selling everything and throwing it into anything, I do believe in diversifying and hedging. And one of the great things about gold and silver and Noble Gold as a company is that they're perfect for hedging your investments and your retirements against the expected wave of inflation. If you go over to noblegoldinvestments.com right now or call them at 877-646-5347, then you can be put in touch with a specialist that can help you with your individual concerns. It's not a call center. They're not trying to just push the sale no matter what. It's just an expert that you can talk to about your concerns. And with the qualifying IRA, you can either receive a 3-ounce silver coin or a 5-ounce America the Beautiful silver coin. Again, with a qualifying purchase. That's noblegoldinvestments.com or 877-646-5347. So transes as athletes have been in the news a lot in recent years. And to be clear, we're not talking about female to male transes as athletes. We almost never hear about them. We exclusively hear about male to female transes as athletes because going through a biologically male puberty, being born male, gives you unbelievable advantages in sports, which is why people are looking with shock and awe at the absolute domination of women's sports by people who are biologically male. Now, to be clear, I just want to put this out there into the world so you guys know I am a stunning and brave supporter and an absolute progressive in my heart and in my mind. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do to your own body. You can have whatever cosmetic procedures you want. I would recommend stopping after 3 procedures max because otherwise you're going to get that Hollywood silicone monster face that a lot of older actresses have. But overall, you are allowed to do the things that you want to do to change your appearance on the outside so you could feel more comfortable on the inside. I'm a swell guy like that. Again, this is a very, very, very progressive channel. Number 2, I think that it is actually quite stunning and brave for Lia Thomas to absolutely dominate, smoke the females in the swimming competitions. And I think pictures like this, if they bother you, honestly, that likely shows your transphobia, because I heard on the internet.com that trans women are actually real women. So if you think that they shouldn't be competing because of their undeniable biological natural advantages, then honestly, that's just your own bigotry being reflected. However, there are people on the other side of this issue, so we are going to hear the other side of this issue, even though the strong, stunning, and brave progressive side is obviously the correct side. Bet there's nothing to see here. Honestly, if you're paying attention to this, you're probably a bigot. We're going to hear about some of the maybe advantages that somebody like Lia Thomas, who was a male swimmer about a year ago, competing against men at the college level, would have competing against women after, again, just 1 year of transising to a woman. So the first thing a lot of people bring up in terms of this conversation when they try to get into the nitty-gritty and they try to defend people like Lia Thomas absolutely dominating, smoking, humiliating biological females in sports that are designed specifically so they don't have to compete against biological males is testosterone levels. They will tell you that they have some studies, and in those studies it shows that a regular transises man or transises woman that transises from a man, by the time they're on their puberty stuff for at least a couple of years or whatever, their testosterone levels are not that different from biological women. So what are we even talking about if we just look at the non-athlete trans as men and then we transition them over time? Then their testosterone levels won't be elevated, so there's probably no biological advantages for athletes who were male athletes before. What are you even talking about? Are you a transphobe? But here's the thing, it's actually in the NCAA rules that Lia Thomas can have an unbelievable natural advantage over her female competitors. It turns out that according to their testosterone measurements, they actually allow Leah Thomas to have basically the bottom rung of what a man would typically have in terms of testosterone levels, which is about 4 times what the absolute peak of a woman would have. I'm thinking of that lady that was competing, I think it was for South Africa or some African country, in the Olympics and got DQ'd and had to do all these examinations because she had a T-score of around 60. Well, Leah Thomas is competing with a T-score, maybe, because we're going to talk about how they don't test Leah Thomas, of about 280, because that's what the NCAA allows. On top of that, there's also just a 1-year waiting period in the NCAA, while the Olympics allows a 3-year waiting period, or actually requires a 3-year waiting period in order to compete for the swimmers. So Leah Thomas is not competing at the same rules as the Olympics. And by the way, Leah Thomas, I can't wait for you to represent America and just go smoke everybody on the international stage to show everyone that when we can field transes, our women are the absolute bestest swimmers of all time. But that being said, even if this weren't the case, even if the NCAA were in fact requiring a much lower T-score, which obviously they should if a woman was taking testosterone to get to the levels that the NCAA allows, they would consider this a performance-enhancing drug and then suspend the person, probably revoke the scholarship, probably kick her out of school for cheating, but Leah Thomas is totally allowed to do this. That would be one thing. But the NCAA is actually not even testing people for testosterone levels throughout the course of this season because these are relatively new rules and they don't think it's fair to implement those rules mid-season. So Leah Thomas is already allowed, according to the rules, to have about 4 times the absolute peak of what a normal woman would have in terms of testosterone. Leah Thomas only had to be 1 year removed from being a college-level male swimmer in the NCAA, and they're not even testing to see if Leah Thomas is compliant with the current ridiculous testosterone standards. Now, like I said, I am totally in favor of the stunning and brave and honestly quite beautiful Leah Thomas swimming against all these female swimmers, and I don't understand why people are so bothered by this. But the bigoted position would be that the testosterone levels, which people often talk about to say how the competition is totally fair, are totally out of balance in terms of the NCAA, and on top of that, they're not even testing the swimmers for elevated testosterone levels, which again, would be completely unfair in the NCAA. That's the bigoted position. I think Leah Thomas, stunning and brave and just magical in every way. And by the way, Leah Thomas has been doing this for a long time, and it's been pretty ridiculous for a long time how good a swimmer Leah Thomas actually is, because there was actually a race where Leah Thomas finished 38 seconds ahead of the next person on the list who was a biological female, somebody actually born female, or as the transes community like to say, assigned randomly, just by happenstance, just by a twist of fate by a mean doctor, female at birth. 38 seconds. That's an absolute domination, obliteration, and humiliation. Leah Thomas probably could have swam an extra 2 laps in the time it took one of those, again, assigned by an evil doctor, female at birth, was waiting to finish in order to come in second. And again, it's stunning and brave. We're very proud of Leah Thomas. We don't think it's odd at all. We don't think the height advantage, the weight advantage, the male puberty, the testosterone advantage that the NCAA allows has any impact on this at all. We're just saying that if we were to take the bigoted position, we would say this is kind of ridiculous and an absolute utter domination of the sport and clearly indicative of unnatural advantages. But look, I found a headline of an article that said, hey, biological women, why don't you actually just beat her? Why don't you just swim faster than Leah Thomas so that this can't be a problem? And honestly, I agree with that. You should just swim faster than her. 38 seconds, just close that gap. Maybe do a couple extra laps. Maybe just a little more exercises, and you could totally do it. It's not an unfair advantage at all. Now, another thing that the bigots, the total meanies on the internet.com often complain about when it comes to stunning and brave transes as women's competing against biological women's is the fact that when they place in one of these high ranks, they're actually bumping a female out of the rankings, thus denying them opportunities in the future. And again, female sports are set up specifically for the sole purpose of having sports where females don't have to compete against males. So one of the swimmers who would have finished 16th and thus qualified for the next thing, again, I don't know a lot about swimming, I just know Leah Thomas is stunning and brave, actually spoke out about how this was unfair, and I think it's absolutely horrible that this transphobe was allowed to speak. It's one thing for you to just lose and get dominated and get utterly smoked by a biological male in terms of a swimming competition, but it is another thing to think that you as a woman somehow should have a voice in talking about what happened to you and this biological male. I am an intersectional feminist, and I truly believe that that means that women need to be quiet. You just gotta stay silent and let the biological male take an opportunity that you worked hard to strive for female sports that could give you scholarships and all kinds of things associated with your whole life working towards this, because we need to cater to the Leah Thomas stunning and brave. Now this swimmer, Rekha Giorgi, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but I know for sure that Rekha got wrecked by Leah Thomas because Leah Thomas is so stunning and brave, talked about how finishing 17th was really demoralizing because if not for the presence of Leah Thomas and the NCAA's decision to prioritize the biological male Leah Thomas over the females competing in the sport, she would have qualified. And honestly, all I have to say to this girl who just wanted to qualify for female sports, who signed up for female sports, who didn't expect to compete against biological males, you should just swim better, just overcome those natural advantages. Just because Leah Thomas set records in the first year that Leah Thomas was allowed to compete in the NCAA, just because Leah Thomas at one point literally finished 38 seconds before the next closest biological female competitor, doesn't mean that you get to talk about how you would have qualified, even though that's 100% true, if not for the NCAA allowing the farce that is Leah Thomas to compete. Look at Leah Thomas on the podium, so stunning, so brave. You need to be quiet, you need to shut your face, and you need to honestly, just stop. Because it's very entitled of you to believe that female sports are actually for females. How dare you? Now, Rekha Giorgi, after she was totally wrecked by Leah Thomas, was actually banned from Twitter for talking about these same issues and how they impacted her, just to show you Twitter's policy that when it comes to speaking out against a biological male, women need to know their place. So she was banned off of Twitter, which I think is very stunning and very brave of Twitter to actually do, but unfortunately for the progressive side, it appears that this racist position that's racist against the transes is gaining traction. And a perfect example of this is friend of the channel, Savannah Hernandez, actually went out to this competition to interview people, women, to ask them about how they feel about the stunning and brave and beautiful and stunning and brave Leah Thompson, or Thomas. I already forgot the name, whatever. Honestly, relax, check out this interview from Savannah Hernandez, who also got suspended from Twitter, by the way, and go follow her on Instagram because you can see great content like this because she's left the Braves doing her own thing. It's absolutely wonderful. Let's see her interview.
Tech swimmer, what did you think about Leah Thomas competing today as a swimmer in this competition? What are you feeling? What are other athletes feeling?
It's a common conception that we are all very disappointed and frustrated with someone who has capabilities more than us women have to be able to compete at this level and take opportunities away from other women. Like, I have a teammate who did not make finals today because she was just bumped out of finals, and it's heartbreaking to see someone who went through puberty as a male and has the body of a male be able to absolutely blow away the competition, and you go into it with a mindset that you don't have a chance.
Now, a lot of people look at this interview, which, by the way, again, great job in all seriousness by Savannah Hernandez going out there and taking the pulse of the people that are actually there to show that there's actually a discrepancy in opinion amongst the people who are at these events, to show the other side of allowing somebody to come in and just dominate something that was not designed for them. But a lot of people will say that's reasonable. A lot of people will say that this person honestly has a solid perspective that's rooted in science, and you do have innate biological advantages going through a male puberty. And I would just respond to that by saying that if you're so concerned about the advantages of going through a male puberty, all the women out there, all the women athletes who are going to get smoked by Lia Thomas and going to get smoked into the future by biological males, have you ever considered going through a biologically male puberty yourself if you wanted to compete? Because honestly, I think that maybe you're just jealous, you're just bitter, and you're just a racist against the transes, and your racism is basically making you say that transes women are somehow, in some way, shape, or form, slightly, maybe, and this is represented more greatly when we talk about athletes, a little bit different than regular women. And honestly, I am ashamed of that position. I'm ashamed of this interview, and I'm so glad that Savannah was out there to capture this racist against transes right here. Let's play a little bit more, but again, trigger warning, content warning, warnings about all warnings. We gotta listen to the words.
If that makes sense. Like, it's hard to compete against someone with the aerobic capacity, the muscle development, the body of a man. It's hard. It's hard to think about it like that. And staying positive, I bet, for other swimmers who are in that heat is probably overwhelming. I'm not sure. I can't speak for them, but it's disappointing to see and frustrating, definitely.
And you said that one of your teammates was crying today because she didn't make the finals. You said that she was 17th,
yes,
and there were 16 spots.
Yes.
So Lia Thomas took one of those spots. Talk to us about what your teammate was going through and that experience.
She was very emotional, and it's hard to see because it's her last NCAAs, and she really loves that race, and it was just heartbreaking to see that she put all her effort into it today, and when the best time that she went in a morning session before and still not make it back. It's hard to see someone who works every day, every night, still not be able to compete against someone like that.
You know, they say that birds of a feather flock together, and this girl's talking about how her friend and teammate was actually the 17th, which makes her Rekka, who got Rekka'd by Lia Thomas, so stunning and brave Lia Thomas, and how she's somehow entitled to compete against other females in the female thing, and it's her last year of NCAA eligibility, and somehow we're supposed to feel bad for her, even though Lia Thomas has graced us all with her stunning and braveness. And it just goes to show you that these racists against transes, these transes phobes racists against transes are just horrible people, and they just stick together. But honestly, that's just one person who was on a team that didn't win, that's just bitter and honestly racist against trans people, as we discussed. But Savannah actually has another interview that we can talk about, because I think it's absolutely crucial for you to understand that these bigots are out there. These racists are definitely amongst us, and we need to deal with them, address them, and confront them, and tell them stop being racist against the transes.
Against transgender track and field athlete June Eastwood, correct?
Yes.
What was it like competing?
I personally competed against June in the DMR, so it was the distance medley relay, and we had different legs. And when I was waiting and I was cheering on my teammate, there were coaches on the sidelines, obviously, and they'll tell you sort of like, this is your cue, or like, this is where you're at, or come on, push it, go faster. And something that was really hard for me to hear was June's coach was on the sidelines telling June to slow down, as June was in first place. And so that was something that was a true sticking point for me in this whole situation, because I realized that this wasn't difficult for June. June had already competed at this level and faster before, and so even though they'd gone through this private hormone suppression therapy, it didn't seem as if it was really coming out as fair in any sense.
Now, a lot of people think that that interview is devastating. That quote is absolutely devastating, that this girl was in a race against one of the transes as athletes, and during the course of that race, when all the coaches were telling the biological females to hustle, put 110% into it, the transes athlete was actually told to slow it down, pull it back, don't beat these women too badly, because honestly, you're doing it. It's a little bit ridiculous, which just goes to show you how absurd what we're watching unfold in the sports world actually is. And by absurd, I don't mean the obvious innate biological advantages that biological males have over females in terms of sports. The absurdity is, of course, in the transes phobia, because we should all ignore that, because what even is a biological difference? I don't even know. Honestly, I just hear bigotry and it makes me want to cry and throw a fit. I've said it before and I'll say it again, just to be clear, this is me being serious, Sean, from this point forward, and that is the most obvious thing in the world. Female sports are for biological females, because that's what they're designed for, to prevent them from having to compete against men while also allowing them to have sports, which allows them to get scholarships or whatever. There's a reason we separate the leagues, but more importantly, there's a reason that there's no actual rule in any of the professional major league sports that prevent females from competing with the men, and yet we don't see women competing with the men. That is because you don't need that requirement, because the difference in skill set, potential, and all that stuff at the top end for the athletes is so much greater for men than for women. We all know this. We all understand this. We're in total and utter denial about this as a society, but the facts are obvious. And you can give me a study, you could say this or that or whatever, but we all know this happens to be the case. The only thing that I wish would have happened is that this would have happened a few years earlier, and this would have happened in tennis, because I would have loved to see Serena Williams get absolutely dominated and smoked by a male to female transes, and the progressives battle it out, especially if the transes was a white person, on whether or not who takes precedent in the intersectional hierarchy. We all know that Serena Williams lost to a tennis player that was 200th ranked on the men's side, because again, the disparity is that great that even the greatest female tennis player of all time could not handle it. So it's not fair, it's ridiculous. We all know it's ridiculous. We should acknowledge that it's ridiculous and reserve female sports for how it has to be. And if you want to watch the transes compete, if you're into that sort of thing, if that's the thing that floats your boat, tickles your fancy, then set up a league for the transes. Have them run in the dash, swim in the swims, whatever, so that they can qualify for college teams, and you could have your own separate third league. But you can't just roll them into the females without taking away the opportunities for the females. That's what we're seeing. It's absurd in every way, and we should acknowledge the absurdity. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media. Support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about Lia Thomas. Till next time.